Sangye chodan soki shonam la shenjo bardu dani kyabsu chi dagi jinso jipa sonamgi drola pincher sangye drupar sho. Sangye chodan soki shonam la shenjo bardu dani kyabsu chi dagi jinso jipa sonamgi drola pincher sangye drupar sho. Sangye chodan soki shonam la shenjo bardu dani kyabsu chi Dagi jinso jipa sonamgi drola pincher sangha drupar sho. Sanjan damje de wadong de we gyutan drampar gyurji. Sanjan damje dungal tong dungal gi gyutan trawar gyuji. Sanjan damje dungal mewa de watong mitra war gyurji. Sanjan damje nyeran charan yila nepe tonyoma nepar gyurji. Oma sobo wa shodo sava dhamma sobo wa shodo hum. So in general, it's said that the Buddha taught two levels of teaching, sutra and tantra. Sometimes sutra is divided into two, Hinayana and Mahayana. Hinayana meaning the basic practice where we simplify our life and get things down, try to get a bit of inner clarity for spiritual spaciousness, I guess you would say. Relax a little bit activities and try to become a little bit more aware of what's going on inside of our mind rather than just the flow of sensory data gained from the events going on outside. Lama Govinda calls that turning, in his foundations of Tibetan mysticism, called it turning about in the deepest seat of consciousness, for which there is no Tibetan equivalent. But the meaning is right, that trying to turn the mind from just watching outer phenomena to watching a little bit the inner life, which is basically the force behind outer life. Based on the quality of inner life, our outer life takes meaning and context and value. Outside things become pleasant or unpleasant based upon inner life more than upon the actual phenomena themselves. And so as Hinayana, we say practicing the three higher trainings of becoming an ethical person, higher ethics, lakpe labasum, higher ethics, and samadhi, or mental meditation on quiet, being able to quiet the mind, often depicted in Tibetan paintings by an elephant, by a man walking up, a monk walking along a path like this, with a monkey, which is the flying away mind, and the elephant, which is the sinking mind. Because when we're playing video games or watching TV or walking through the park, external stimuli basically trigger a kind of awakeness in us. I think a little bit based on the old, what do you call it, lizard brain, as it's referred to in some science circles, a part of our brain which is always looking for stimuli for flight or fight, either fight or flight, something dangerous. We either fight it and eat it, or we run away from it. But when we take the mind off sensory data and turn it inside, sit in quiet, doing nothing, we either become monkey mind, in other words, running away with thoughts here and there, or we become like the sinking elephant in mud, heavily going down, becoming lethargic and a bit sleepy. So samadhi refers to taming the monkey mind and the fly-away monkey mind and the sinking elephant mind. And the wisdom training here, which really means analyzing one's own sense of self, who one thinks one is, has that meaning. So noticing how one's sense of self is like the moon reflected in a lake. It's not the actual moon, it's just what one clings to or holds to, identifies with as who one is. It's a reified projection. And by means of those three become the Noble Eightfold Path, and applied to the 12 links of dependent origination show the way to greater freedom through the Four Noble Truths, as they're known as: unhappiness in the causes and freedom in the causes, freedom in the path. We become more free, more stable, and more wise in the sense of understanding the illusory nature of the sense of self for who we think we are or feel we are, or in Tibetan Ngarzin, the kind of the sense of self that grasps and defines us, even though it's not the real self, something like that. Then the Mahayana teaching, which is expands this on terms of the self, to looking at how everything we experience is really an experience in our own mind. And so the things we experience are not what they seem, but are twisted and colored by our perceiving mind, noticing how nothing is what it seems. And on that basis, developing the bodhicitta, the great love and compassion, which takes responsibility to benefit the whole universe, even the beings living on the planet Sirius. To develop universal love, compassion, and the mind of the great hero, heroine. And on that basis, the realization that the more wise one is, the more beneficial one is. The less wise, the less beneficial. The more pervasive one's love and compassion, the more beneficial. The less pervasive one's love and compassion, the more prejudiced and partial one is. A mother dog loves her own children and protects them ferociously, but will bite anyone walking nearby. The love and compassion is prejudiced, you could say. And later in Lojong, we'll see this kind of how to balance that personal responsibility for your karmic connectivity with things, with how to express love and compassion in those kind of situations. And based on that, the aspiration to enlightenment to benefit all, the practice of the 6 paramita. So usually at the beginning of every empowerment situation, something's said about those two. And usually in the text, they'll write little things about it. And they quote people like this. For instance, the lineage comes down through Nagarjuna, comes down to the Indian master Dharmakirti. And in the painting here at the top, up in the top left from your side of looking, that's the great Indian master Dharmakirti, who was a big Vajrapani man. And then the lineage was brought to Tibet by Padmasambhava and came down through that lineage to Namkha Gyaltsen, and from him came to Tsongkhapa and came down in different lineages. Also the Rechungpa lineage. Rechungpa brought a lineage to Tibet, was transmitted through Milarepa and down through the ages. And the Sakyas had a lineage that they brought in, and there are 2 or 3 other lineages that were not so important. Later, those were all kind of fused together into one lineage. But in Dalai Lama school, they emphasized the Nyingma transmission rather than the Rechungpa lineage, because that Nyingma master was said to be an actual incarnation of Vajrapani. So because of that, his lineage was considered especially blessed. And later in Nyingma, of course, they had various terma or treasure revelation updates. And they did things like turn the white Garuda into a black Garuda and things like that. Very revolutionary. It was very nice when Ling Rinpoche gave it in 1973, Christmas, roughly Christmas of 73 in Bagaya, because the Dalai Lama had Dogo Khyentse Rinpoche and Sakya Trizin Rinpoche and Kala Rinpoche, who held the other three main lineages, sit in on the empowerment ceremony and give the blessing from those other three lineages as well. And so, you know, I was one of 350,000 people there. But it was still a very powerful experience. And to get it in that way from the blessings from all the four main, well, the three main lineages, and the Gelugpa lineage being the combination of the three older ones, because Nyingma one came in the early period, 7th, 8th century, and the others came in the other two came in the 11th century. And Tsongkhapa united the three lineages in the 14th century, late 14th century. But it was very nice to have a kind of a modern reunification of the lineages at that time. I think of those other lamas, the Sakya Trizin was my favorite, remains my favorite. Outside of Ling Rinpoche, Trizin Rinpoche, and Dalai Lama, for me, Sakya Trizin. Now they call him Tri Chen because he retired a few years ago, last year I think, and passed the lineage to his son, which is common in Sakya. But one of the great, great living masters, and if any of you get the opportunity to meet him when he's in the States, he travels and gives empowerments. Some wealthy person built him a nice center in Walden, New York. That's just below Woodstock. It's like a half hour below Woodstock, a couple of hours north of New York, so very easy to get there. And if you see him doing some interesting thing, you know, he's the same age as Dalai Lama, more or less. So very, very wonderful to get anything from him before he passes away. So I'm sure his son's a nice guy and well-trained and all that, but those old characters from Tibet are one of a kind. And the new guys are, I don't know, a little bit spoiled. I think there's something in old Tibet and the kind of the intensity of the training which created a humility in those lamas, which is hard to see in a lot of the newer generation where they live a lot softer lives in exile because, you know, the weather is better and there's not as many of them, so the training, they're kind of pampered a little bit. Don't want to scare them off. If you treat them too rough, they'll like run away and become a banker. Or worse, a lawyer. Or worse, a dentist. No, dentists are very important. So usually the tantric empowerments begin with a little bit of talk like that about the lineage, and also mention that what is should be the qualifications. But qualifications means what they should do. What's the qualification of the Lama giving the empowerment? And what are the qualifications of the participants? Actually, the word in Tibetan isn't really qualification, Jawa. It also means sort of like things to do, but it really means things that should have been done or should be done. And one is from the Lama side to have received the authentic lineage and done the retreat with the mantras and done the fire puja and those kind of things. So I guess 73, 83, 93, 103, 113. That's like 45 years. I've been doing that practice. And I think it's remained one of my favorites. of the simple tantric practices. Of the more complex ones, then of course Yamantaka, Chakrasambhara are unexcelled for modern times. Yamantaka being male tantra, male energy tantra, and Chakrasambhara, female energy tantra. But this one is special in that it's sort of halfway between a yidam and a dharmapala. For that reason it's known as Nyampo Sum, the three healers. And often we say Garuda is like the body of enlightenment, Hayagriva, the emotion and energy of enlightenment, speech of enlightenment, but speech meaning emotion, energy of enlightenment, and Vajrapani, the mind of enlightenment. In this context, they're taught like that, and we'll see that reflected in the way the empowerment goes. Now, this is one of those so-called fusion tantras, where the great masters of India took three different tantras taught by the Buddha and fused them together as a solitary practice, as a unified practice. In other words, Buddha taught the Vajrapani Tantra, and he taught the Hayagriva Tantra and the Garuda Tantra. Now, people notice that many Indian schools also have Garuda, also have Hayagriva. Of course, they stole them from us Buddhists. They should be paying us a royalty. And no, it's that these practices are far older than Buddhism and far older than what we think of as Hinduism, that they go back through thousands of years. And when they come into a particular school, a modern kind of school, they will basically be tailored to fit that school. So, for instance, one of the great strengths of Buddhism is that when it came into India, it didn't attempt to displace everything, but rather whatever it saw as compatible with the Enlightenment tradition, it incorporated and just sort of recast in an Enlightenment-orientated light. So it took all of the old tantric lineages and did that with them. So we say Buddha was the fourth Buddha of the 1000 of this auspicious eon, this auspicious era. And before him was the third, and before that the second. And they talk about Sangye Rabdun, the 7, each of whose teachings last for 5,000 years. So 4 so far in this eon, this age, and 3 that are well remembered from the previous age. Actually, Thailand has 28 remembered from previous. And so they say in the Thai tradition and Burmese tradition, I think it really started in Burma or caught fire as a inspired idea. There's undoubtedly a scriptural reference, but from the time the Buddha first generated the bodhicitta, the wish to become a Buddha in order to benefit all beings, he did it under one particular Buddha, 28 Buddhas ago. And so some of the Burmese and Thai temples have temples dedicated to those 28. But in the Mahayana tradition of India, mostly they just talk about the Sangye Rabdun, the 7, the 4 of this age and the 3 main ones from the previous age. So these things like the tantras and various teachings of the Buddha, the 84,000 teachings of Buddha, it's not that Buddha sat down and thought, I'll invent 84,000 teachings. But rather drawing together those ancient lineages and weaving them into a fabric that would last for 5,000 years in our era. We're now about 2,000 560 some years into that, so it's another 2,400 years to go. So it's kind of interesting that 2,500 years into our era of the fourth Buddha, that Prime Minister Nehru in India called a conference in India of all the Buddhist masters from other countries, from Buddhist China and Taiwan and Hong Kong and Singapore and Japan and Korea and Thailand, Burma, Sri Lanka, and had a sort of big Buddhist gala in Bodh Gaya. And if you see photos then, and even when I went in 1972, Bodh Gaya was a very sleepy little town with like no hotels and only 3 little temples, and almost impossible to get there easily. And now it's probably got 100 temples and 200 hotels and an international airport, all thanks to Nehru's kind of work. But it's kind of an auspicious beginning of the second half of this 5,000-year period. I think the first time I met the Dalai Lama, someone in the audience said, Your Holiness, I think this world's going to end soon. Everything looks so bad. And the Dalai Lama tapped his foot on the earth. He said, This? No problem. We're only halfway through the 5,000-year period. We still have to go another 2,500 just to finish this period. That's a nice thing about prophecies. They stabilize the human condition. If you're having a very rough day, but you know when you get home at night, you're going to have a nice square meal and your wife or husband or boyfriend or girlfriend will be there to give you a few smooches and hugs, you get through the day okay. So because of the prophecy of 2,500 years, these little ups and downs of Obamas and Trumps and Bushes and whatnot aren't so rough. They sort of fade a little bit into the background. So with Tantra, we should see the place as the mandala of Vajrapani. And here we've got a picture of Vajrapani. On his head is a little horse head. You may not be able to see it. I hope you all brought your opera glasses with you. A little horse head, and above that is a Garuda in flight. And these are coming from the Kriya Tantra tradition of 3 basic families. The Vajra family being Vajrapani, the Lotus family, that here being Hayagriva, and the Tathagata family, the Buddha family, or Tathagata family, that here being represented by Garuda. So in other words, it's bringing together the 3 quintessential elements that are known as the 3 families of Kriya Tantras. But Hayagriva is also a highest yoga tantra, so therefore it also brings together some highest yoga tantra qualities. For that reason, the empowerment is not exclusively, it follows a little bit the form of a Kriya Tantra empowerment ceremony, but it has some of the features of a highest yoga tantra empowerment. So the practice is mainly like a Kriya Tantra, but it has some features of a highest yoga tantra practice. In Tibetan, Chaju, literally, Cha literally means activity, so sometimes translated as action tantra. But the second level of tantra is known as Charya Tantra, which also, Charya can also mean action. So like it means, so Kriya sometimes in a more pervasive modern Indian sense often means purification, purification Tantra. But in the Buddhist sense, it's not referring to something being purified, but rather relating to one's naturally pure qualities of body, speech, mind. Physically, we are like Garuda, an eagle in flight. Emotionally and intellectually, we're like Hayagriva, energetically Hayagriva, a green horse running at full gallop. And mentally, we're like Vajrapani, a big blue tough guy wearing a tiger skin. So compassion, wisdom, and power being the three quintessential spiritual qualities. Our body should be utterly free in compassion, and our thoughts and emotions should be fully energized, like a galloping horse. And our mind should be utterly fearless, like a wrathful deity holding a vajra, which means the indestructible, the 5 indestructible wisdoms. So we begin by just reaffirming our Buddhist refuge, as it's known, Kyabdro in Tibetan. So we repeat 3 times after me. Gonchok Sum La, Kyabsu Dro, Jigpa Tamshe, Daki Dro, Droe Gela, Je Rang, Shanju Semni, Dani Kye, Shanju Semni, Dani Kye, Shanju Semni, Dani Kye. And Goncho Sumla Da Kyabchi, I look for inspiration, or I turn for inspiration to the 3 jewels, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Buddha here often meaning the ultimate nature of our own mind, our Buddha nature, which a Sangha refers to as our sky-like nature. And so our Buddha is like just like the ultimate nature of ice is water, the ultimate nature of our icy mind is the flowing river of our Buddha nature, like a wish-fulfilling gem and so on, gives those kind of examples. And the Dharma is the way we achieve realization of that ultimate Buddha mind nature. And Sangha are kind of our Dharma friends on the way, if you will, advanced practitioners. So the first line is like that, and the second line, Digba Tamshi So Sha, I release all of my negativities. So Sha. Sha means to split open, so whatever negative energies I have, whatever guilt complexes and unhappy feelings and all of these things, just clink, let them go, gone. Droe Gela Je Rang, I arouse joy in all of the goodness of all living beings. So to be a practicing Buddhist, you have to, like, when you look at someone, think, my goodness, that is a joyful person. And Nagarjuna points out that even the very, very negative beings, there's always something good about them. There's always some good energy there underneath whatever appears to be not so good. That is to always see the goodness, good qualities in others. Doesn't mean not noticing whatever little problems or defects they may seem to have. We never know in the appearing defects of others if they're their defects or just things that we project on them, isn't it? Due to our own personal preferences. Like I love to switch between CNN and Fox. It's amazing how two peoples, most of whom are highly educated college graduates, can have such different interpretations of any given situation. It's like Buddha gave the example of 4 blind people walking along. They touch an elephant, and the one who touches the belly thinks it's a house, and the one who touches the leg thinks it's a tree, and the one who touches the nose thinks it's a vine, or and the one who touches a tail thinks it's a snake, something like that. So we can never say for sure that the appearing faults in others are really faults. If someone tries to rob you, for example, it might be that in a previous life you borrowed some money from them and forgot to pay it back, or you died early and they're just coming a little late to collect it. And we'll see a lot of talk of that in the Lojong teaching, particularly in the point of taking difficult situations as assets or friends in practice. That everything that appears to us could be something good if we can use it correctly. I like a story in ancient India from one of the early teaching tales, and it's a young guy who's a pauper, and he can't figure out what to do, but he doesn't like to beg, so he's got no money and no help and no hope. And so he walks down the street and sees a dead mouse, so he picks it up. And then he walks along the street and sees someone selling something, some grains, but has a cat, and he says, "I'll give you my dead mouse for for some of your grains." And then he goes out and trades that with a farmer for some butter or something. So how everything transforms. So we can take whatever difficult circumstances and transform them consciously and yogically, you could say. In Buddhism, we use that word yoga not to refer to stretchy exercises, but to connecting to a deeper nature. Connecting to a deeper nature. Tibetans translated the word as naljor. Nal meaning something authentic or something true, or something natural, something like that, connecting to the deeper nature of being, or the more natural nature of being. And after the refuge, we generate the bodhicitta, the Mahayana mind of universal responsibility. I will become a heroine who personally, without any assistance from anyone else, will save the entire universe. And the idea there is that by our determination to benefit the universe, we become beneficial to all beings. Making the benefit to others a principle of our activity. For instance, when I was up in Lincoln, Nebraska, the people I was staying with had a toilet that didn't flush properly. And so there was a mechanical engineer who would pick me up at the airport. And I phoned him up and I said, "We have to make this toilet flush properly. And by doing so, we will benefit all living beings. Henceforth, anyone who ever flushes this toilet will feel our bodhicitta aspiration, and as the waters rush down the pipes and out into the sewers and out into that purification, and then get recycled and go up into the clouds. The rains that fall on China will carry our bodhicitta motivation." He was inspired and came running over. You know, it's very hard when you're working on a toilet to get someone to put their hand down the toilet. But you can always do that with a mechanical engineer. They can be talked into such things. And so now, 3 or 4 times daily, our beneficial energies go down the sewer, over to the cleansing plant. The water goes up as clouds, some of it, and others goes as composted fertilizer, bringing gobar gas, natural gases for the heating of some distant city. So bodhicitta doesn't really mean anything in particular, but it means, in that sense, but it means everything we do to do on the sense of benefiting all beings, but also from the most mundane task to the most spiritual. So if we meditate as an sort of an example of something that's overtly spiritual, it can be mechanical, but it's overtly, at least, it seems to be spiritual. It's intended to be spiritual. If we do it with bodhicitta, it becomes a universal heroine practice. If we just do it to sit down to think, oh, this will make me relax and feels good and looks nice, and I can be lazy without looking lazy. Be respectably lazy. By bringing the bodhicitta thought, it becomes a bodhicitta action. And usually we do that by reciting it. We generate that thought. Now, if we to benefit others, as we'll see in Lojong, what's meaning really is generating the wisdom, becoming a Buddha quickly in order to be of greatest benefit. The stupider one is, the less one can benefit others, and the more enlightened one is, the wiser one is, the more one can benefit others. And so the aspiration is to benefit others, not to become wise. But in order to benefit others, one must become wise. It's like when you work to make money as a bodhisattva, you don't think, I'm making money to do this or that or the other in a kind of an ordinary way, but by becoming a billionaire, I can have a bigger house and 50 servants, and that way I'll give work to 50 servants, and I'll make those 50 servants all at least pretend to be compassionate. And that way their compassion, pretending compassion, will be taken as real compassion by some, and inspire others to actually be compassionate. We can't make anyone else be compassionate, but we can make them act compassionately. You don't see that sort of thing said in Tibetan texts so much. They'll say, whatever you accomplish, whatever you do, and whether you're a king with fabulous wealth or the most prosperous business person. There was one guy who was Buddha's main patron in his lifetime, and so he was like one of the richest guys in India. And so he said, you can become as wealthy as, I forget what his name was, probably Bill Gates as his reincarnation, or Warren Buffett, or not Donald Trump. He's not as wealthy as he says he is. But whatever one does, whatever one gets, for the benefit of all beings, to try and, as Seventh Dalai Lama put it, see everything you get as borrowed, to be left behind when you pass away, and to be used by you in as creative a way as possible during your life to bring benefit to all living beings, bring benefit to the world. And so this kind of aspiration there, whatever beauty I have, may I use my beauty to bring benefits to others. Whatever eloquence I have, may I use that to benefit others, and so on. Benefit how? By increasing compassion and trying to increase mental clarity and wisdom. Those kind of two things. So that verse we can say in English. Repeat after me. Just like All Buddhas of the past generated the bodhicitta. So now I do the same. So now I do the same. So now I do the same. And they usually repeat a second verse, which is just like all Buddhas of the past. Engage in the six paramita. So now I do the same. So now I do the same. So now I do the same. Jitar depe sagi gi shenju semte kepar je data danta ngagi te shenju sen te kepar jis. Something like that. So let's take a 15-minute break. People can stretch their legs and use washroom, etc., and we'll go on to the next little bit. I'm not sure if we are turned on. Wow. Wow. And thirdly, we take what is known as a tantric precept. So the Dalai Lama says the precept really from refuge, which is a Hinayana level of practice, is to try never to harm others unnecessarily. Not only other humans, but any living beings. And modern Buddhists like to even extend that to plant life, like treat your tomatoes kindly. Never to harm others, never to create any damage as much as possible when living in life. And the essence of the precept of the Mahayana precept is to always to try to be beneficial to others as much as possible. And then from Vajrayana, to try to see your body as a body of light and the world as a manifestation of holographic energy. To notice how the world is not the hard, solid stuff it seems to be, the way our brain processes, but noticing its pure energy aspect. Often in Tantra, this is said to be his body is the body of a deity, world is the paradise of the deity. All sound, all speech is Vajra music, and all thoughts and emotions are bliss and void. And that's kind of an auspicious precept to take on St. Patrick's Day, because the Irish always try to be happy and jolly regardless of what's going on. And I think, but that's the essence of Tantra, is that although some things may not feel so great at the time, if we take them in a great way, we carry them in a great direction. The more we notice a pain, or more attention we give to a pain or an inconvenience, the greater it becomes in our mind, the more strength and power we give to it. I like to mention, when you go to the dentist, just before you give the needle in the most painful part of your mouth, they say wiggle your toes, and you're thinking of your toes, and then the needle bang, you hardly notice it. But if you're sitting there thinking, oh, here it comes, here it comes, here it comes, ouch! So in that same way, the precept to notice the pure energy nature of your body is deity body. And your speech is Vajra song, All sounds you hear, Vajra song. Mind as pure bliss and radiance. Sometimes bliss and void, but void there just meaning knowingness, pure knowingness, or pure being, something like that, beingness. So we generate that third precept in our mind, and we can do it with a verse and recitation, or we can just generate the thought. So let's just generate the thought. I will always try to see the best in myself and others at all times. The other thing is with tantric practice, it should be sort of a play. It's called Rope Lagi Neljor, the playful deity yoga. So always try to be playful in all things. I like that movie of, what was it called? When they went up Everest and they're coming down and like a bunch of them died. And a dentist like passed out and was frozen, lost some fingers and feet and all that sort of stuff. And when he crawled down to the tent, he said, "What's it got to do to get some help around here?" And thus, he obviously practiced Tantra in a previous life. But I think the playful quality of Tantra is really what makes it work. Because otherwise our life can often be very difficult with many different situations going on. But when we take it lightly, it becomes light. And the more we worry and angst over it. So I think the famous statement by Shantideva is something, if there's a problem and you can fix it, don't worry, be happy, just fix it. If there's a problem and you cannot fix it, don't worry, be happy, just learn to live with it. And our situation in life is always like that, but Tantra has kind of an accelerated way to do it, or enhanced way of doing that, which is body of light. Life is theater, mystical theater. And the world you're in is some sort of theatrical paradise, something like that. So usually when you say that, then you're supposed to ring the Vajra and bell. And then when that happens, the precept or the determination, a precept here really means determination, to always try to see and be the best, arises within you.